Hi, I'm Michael Valitutti. Welcome to my latest gem talk on pearls. Pearls is really a very interesting topic because you're dealing with something that's alive to actually manufacture them. So it's not like diamonds or rubies or sapphires or kunzites, which are mineral based, and you go into the earth and you dig them up and they're essentially an inanimate object. When you're dealing with pearls, initially to trigger the nacre process, these things are alive. So it's something very, very, very different than any other gemstone. Now, according to the Library of Congress, pearls are probably, and GIA, the oldest gemstone known to man with coral. The reason is that the logic behind that is that many pearls, oysters, and coral are found very close to the shore. So when man would venture into the water, you know, they didn't have to go underwater, even chest high. They would see coral, they would see these mollusks, and they would pick them up, and they would open them up, and they would eat whatever was on the inside and cook it. And now and then, if they were lucky, they would find a pearl, or in the case of just a shell, it would be very shiny and attractive. So they find these in ancient tombs and all this, that even, you know, literally tens of thousands of years ago, man would enjoy this because, quite frankly, it's very pretty, and it's the nacre. And it's very, very lovely, very pretty. It has a very iridescent quality. So this is probably the origins of what we know as the jewelry industry. And that's where it started, by just people foraging and finding something very attractive and just keeping it for ornamental purposes. Anyway, pearls really break down into two basic categories: your freshwater and your saltwater. And I will get into both of that. Now, when someone says there's natural pearls and there's cultured pearls, the only difference is how they came into being. So if I have here a mollusk, okay, or an oyster, and the difference between oyster and mollusk is we call oysters if they're in salt water. If they're in fresh water, we call them mollusks, but they're basically the same thing, but it just, one lives in salt water, one, of course, lives in salt water. So if we find a pearl naturally in an oyster or a mollusk that we did not trigger or initiate, we call that a natural pearl because it occurred without the interference of man. When it's cultured, we trigger the nacre process, which is what a pearl is. We trigger it. We trigger it by putting in an irritant, and I will explain that. So that's basically the only difference between a natural and a cultured. And in most cases, the natural pearl will have thicker nacre because there's no bead on the inside. And I'll explain to you how that occurs. Now, culturing pearls actually was invented by a Japanese fellow, and he started the process and experimenting with it at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, the beginning of the 20th century, believe it or not. And actually, that was one of the main triggering elements of the entire gemology program coming into being, because people were having a hard time distinguishing between cultured pearls and pearls that occurred naturally. So that is when in Britain and London they began to develop the discipline that I practice, which is gemology. So it kind of goes back to the origins of what we're all about. Anyway, when you culture a pearl, you have to start the nacre deposition. So what is nacre? I want you to imagine, you know, the mollusk just like this. I mean, it has two valves, two shells like this. The nacre is basically, to put it to you, it's calcium carbonate. It's almost like it's saliva. So just like when you would get an irritant in your eye naturally begins to tear up. When they get an irritant inside their body, they naturally begin to tear up. But it's not tears, it's basically sort of a milky substance, and it's called nacre. It's basically calcium aragonate carbonate. That's basically the chemical formulation of that. So when we think of irritants in a mollusk, we'll think of a piece of sand or something like that. That actually is not what they're concerned about. They don't really care if there's a piece of sand, something hard, they can expel that. What they get irritated by is foreign matter. Basically the bits of flesh from another creature, if that gets in there, that can start to infect them. So Mother Nature defends them by coating that, by just surrounding it with this nacre, so therefore it can't infect them, and it's a way of them just surviving. And that ultimately is what a pearl is. It's their way of defending themselves against a foreign element. So years ago, man realized, it was this Japanese gentleman that, I think it was Mikimoto was his name, and he realized that he could trigger that process. And he first started off with blister pearls, which are Mobby pearls, and I will get into that. And what he did was he took a shell, a half bead, stuck it on the inside. He literally glued it on the inside of a mollusk, and he found nothing happened. Then he did that, and he put a little bit of flesh from another mollusk, and he stuck that on there, and that was the magic formula. As soon as that happened, it started to coat it with nacre. And then he would go back like a year or two later, open them up and say, look, I've created a pearl. And then he experimented with a round one, and that is how the Japanese Akoya industry, the Akoya refers to its pearl, the actual mollusk, how they invented the entire culturing process. And then from there, they developed Tahitian pearls, and it went into the blister pearls, and I'll get into all that. But that's basically how it started. Pearls are beautiful. Women have loved them throughout centuries. I love them. I know you're going to love them, and especially as I go through it. Now, of all the gem talks I've done, this one is going to be a little bit longer because simply, and I want you to be prepared for that, because there's a lot to cover, because you might just say it was just pearls. There's a lot to cover with pearls because you're dealing with all these different species of mollusks, and each one acts a little bit differently. So I really want to educate you so you know what you're talking about when you are buying a pearl. So in cultured pearls, why don't we start off with the origin? That would be your Japanese Akoya cultured pearl. I don't actually have a shell here, but the Japanese Akoya mollusk, and that's the name of it, is the Akoya. It's about half the size of this Tahitian. So it would be about yay big. So the Tahitian here is about 6 inches, 5.5 inches. It'd be about 3 inches. The water off the coast of Japan is very, very cold. So the Akoya deposits nacre at a very, very slow rate. The good thing about that is that the nacre crystals will be very tight. So with the Akoya pearl, you tend to get a very high luster, but the nacre is very, very thin. So when you buy a Japanese pearl, if you were to cut it in half, you'll see a bead on the inside, and you'll see a thin layer of actual pearl surrounding that bead. That thin layer will be about half the thickness of a sheet of paper. It's really, really thin. So, and I think that that's one reason why Japanese Akoya pearls have kind of fallen off the wayside as far as popularity is concerned, because of the longevity concern. There's not a lot of nacre. You can get them when they're a little bit thicker in nacre, but they cost an absolute fortune. And because of the other pearls that are available today, quite frankly, at some better prices, I think that that's why the pearl industry has taken off in that respect. But when I started in gemology back in 1980, it basically was mostly the Japanese Akoya pearl. Freshwater pearls back then were like rice pearls. They weren't what they are today. So I think the Chinese and the Tahitian industry really changed a lot. But that would be your basic first pearl. They're in the water at least 2 to 3 years. In most cases, most mollusks are in the water 2 to 3 years, and they suspend them in these cages to protect them. And it sounds easy, like, they culture them and all this, but when they do culture them, it's hard to protect them because you can't just open up the mollusk and say, hey, how are you doing? They basically just have to hang them there. And you go in there to make sure that there's no critters, that there's nothing else trying to eat them or anything like this. But basically, you're subject to Mother Nature. So you're culturing them, you're hanging them on these long, they almost look like chain link fences, and they all attach them, and they're all like submerged like this, sort of vertical. You have to leave them there, and you have to pray that there's no storms, that there's no bacteria, because there's no antibiotics you can put in the water. You're out in the ocean. So it takes a lot to culture, a lot of patience. Imagine waiting 2 years or 3 years, and then finally you take them out, you open them up, and you find, the harvest wasn't that good. So I really have to credit these people because they put a lot of effort and work into actually making pearls that I think we all take for granted. So your next pearl that I want to talk to you about is your Tahitian pearl. And the shell is called Pinctada magnitifera variety Comingi. And I want to actually show it to you here on the video shot here. Now this is your Tahitian mollusk, and like I said, the name of it is Pinctada magnitifera variety Comingi. These are cultured off the warm waters of the Tahitian archipelago. Specifically in and around the Gambier Islands, the water there is about 82 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Very important because it really is a tropical area, and the The waters there are perfect for culturing these types of pearls. Now, do you see all the little colors that you're getting here? That's called iridescence. The reason that you're seeing that is that all pearls are made up of nacre. Nacre, if you looked at it under an electron microscope, looks like the bricks that make up a brick house, except the bricks have a curvature to them, almost like a sickle does. And it's these concentric circles or semicircles of nacre that are piled up, one on top of the other, almost like a brick building. And by doing that, they scatter the light through light interference. And that's exactly what's happening here. So this is non-treated. This is the way it comes out. These are very hard shells, and this is your Tahitian pearl. Look how beautiful that is. And these are cultured on the inside. Now, all saltwater pearls, mollusks, or oysters, only can handle one pearl at a time, unlike the freshwater, and I'll get into that. And that's why saltwater pearls cost so much, is because we have to use one oyster to make one pearl. Now, they start off with a bead on the inside. And look, I've actually taken this out. The bead has fallen out. But the reason that I'm showing you this is that if you focus in on that, look at that surrounding circle there. Do you see how thick that is? That's the actual nacre right over here. So I'm teaching you something here. This is the actual nacre right over here. The reason that everyone loves Tahitian pearls and why we can use Tahitian pearls in a ring is that the nacre is at least 2 millimeters thick. It's fantastic. It is one of the most durable pearls that you can ever buy on the market. It's fantastic. So these Tahitian pearls are amazing. Now, the Tahitian pearls come in natural colors. This will be called the peacock because it kind of looks like the peacock color of the surface. This is called peacock. They also find this naturally in white, all black, or silver. So these are not color treated whatsoever. The chocolate variety that you find that's actually bleached. So they will take these pearls and they will bleach them to make them like that chocolate or brown color. But the 4 colors that I told you about are natural. 99.9% of the Tahitian pearls are not treated. And they're expensive. It takes 2 to 3 years in the water to culture them. It's all done by hand. It really is. An interesting thing about the culturing of Tahitian pearls is that it's the only pearl industry that the mollusk or the pearl, it's not destroyed. After they take out this pearl, they will insert another bead. They use it for about 7 to 8 years, and then after, when it gets older, they throw it back in the water and it gets to live its natural life. So unlike all the other culturing where the mollusk or the oyster will be destroyed, this is not destroyed. It actually is put to work, and then it actually goes into retirement, believe it or not. I think a lot of people have a hard time believing that, but it's actually true. Now, these pearls will tend to come in a size from about 9 millimeter to about 12 to 14 millimeter is about the biggest size. So basically, the bigger the mollusk, right, the bigger the pearl. That's kind of like a fact of it. Now, there is another, I'm going to pull this away for a second. The other South Sea pearl that you know about is actually called South Sea pearl. And that South Sea pearl is from a mollusk that looks very similar to this, but it's called Pintada maxima. So it looks almost identical to this, but it's big. It's about this big. It's about 12 to 14 inches in diameter. And those culture the South Sea pearls. Now, the South Sea pearls are the most expensive pearls. They start at about 12 millimeter, and they can go all the way up to the size of a marble, 17 or 18 millimeter. And the mollusk is very, very big. You get them cultured in North Australia, because their north is like our south. So that would be around Broome, Australia. You also have them cultured in Indonesia, off the coast of Burma, or now called Myanmar, which is usually where I get mine. So they make beautiful pearls. They're very expensive. You get them in all white. You get them in this unbelievable golden color. It looks just like gold. And it's the only pearl in the world that actually has a natural golden color. You can also get them in black, but they are amazing. If you ever get an opportunity to own a South Sea, you want to own a South Sea. And the South Sea, like the Tahitian, has very thick nacre, very thick. So you're going to get a minimum of 2 millimeter, often 3 millimeter or more. And that's huge for nacre because these things are hard. So they last a lifetime. So if you buy a Tahitian pearl or the South Sea pearl, your great grandchildren will be wearing it. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's something that if you can, you do want to invest in. They're absolutely fantastic. The next one I want to talk to you about, and I'm sticking still with saltwater, is your Mobby Pearl, also known as your Blister Pearl. Now, this mollusk is called Pretoria Penguin, also known as the black lip wingtip. Or it's the tip of a wing, just like a bird, tip of a wing, and black lip. So that's what this is called, the name of this mollusk. And I'm going to take it into my close-up shot here, and I want to show everyone what this is about. So first of all, we're going to notice how iridescent this is. I've always noticed as a gemologist that pearls that are saltwater based always tend to have a higher shine for some reason. They really, really do. Now this is a blister pearl, so the culturing process for this and the round is exactly the same. The only difference is that in this case they used half of a sphere versus a whole ball. So half of a ball versus the whole ball. And by the way, what is the irritant made out of, that ball that they put in here, or the half sphere in this case? It's made from the shell of another mollusk. They usually like to use the American pigtail mussel from the Mississippi Delta. And that's because those mussels, at this part right over here, is very, very thick. So they take that and they chop them and they make little cubes out of them, and they tumble the edges off of them. They make a perfect ball. Then they'll cut the ball in half, and they will use that to culture this. So they will take that half sphere, they literally will glue it on the inside of the mouth, okay? And then what they do is they take a bit of irritant, they take a bit of flesh from another mollusk and they attach it on top of the sphere. And that is what triggers this to deposit the nacre. It's saliva. It's kind of trying to protect itself. So this would be a bivalve mollusk, which basically means that when this actually exists in Mother Nature, there's two halves like this, okay? So this is how you see them in Mother Nature, but only one side of the lip, usually the upper lip or the upper shell, will actually have this bead nuclei. Now this again will be in the water for about 2 to 3 years, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you often heard the term mother of pearl. What is mother of pearl? Well, this here is the mother of pearl, and that is a pearl. So, what is the difference between the mother of pearl and the pearl literally? A mother of pearl is flat. This is either a semicircle or round, and we call that a pearl. They're the same thing, except the shape. So this is called mother of pearl, it's nacre. This is called a pearl, it's nacre. It's just a shape. It would be no difference than a baguette to a loaf of bread. They're both loaves of bread, but one is small, or a bun, and one is larger, a loaf. That's the only difference. So that's something for you to know. Absolutely fan. And I love mother of pearl. Mother of pearl is absolutely gorgeous, and so is pearl here. So what they will do is they will take this and they will cut this out. They'll slice this, and believe it or not, they only used the shell part of this. They don't use the irritant on the inside. Then what they will do is they will cut another part of the shell, glue it on the back, and they will fill the inside of this with wax. So that is how, and this is called an assembled Mobby pearl. And all Mobby pearls are done this way. They're great. Why do we like Mobby pearls? Mobby pearls are good because they can be cultured in quantities enough where we can get them very, very smooth, and we can get different shapes, like the heart shapes and all this. So we will put a heart-shaped nuclei in this, and it'll actually make a heart shape. So you can do a lot of very different things with this. Now, this is the natural color of it. They do come in other colors. When they do, they are simply dyed, okay? But for most cases, this is the natural color of the beautiful, beautiful Mobby pearl from Pretoria Penguin. Mostly this is done in Indonesia today. That is the big culturing industry there in Indonesia. And some of them are this size. I'll go into the shot, and some of them are that size. But you can see the consistency of how absolutely beautiful these are. And Mobby pearls were the first cultured pearls in the world. They're absolutely gorgeous. But again, they're costly because one mollusk, one pearl. That is why saltwater pearls are so expensive. Now, I'm going to take this away, and we're going to now talk about freshwater pearls, okay? Mostly freshwater pearls. And freshwater pearl, the mollusk is called Iridescence. Iridescence is what it's called. The reason the freshwater pearl mollusks and freshwater pearls cost relatively little compared to the saltwater is that every mollusk they can culture up to 32 to 38 pearls in one mollusk. So it's very, very efficient. So think of it. One mollusk, one pearl. One mollusk, 38 pearls. This is why freshwater pearls are relatively inexpensive compared to other pearls, because there's such a huge volume. As a matter of fact, if you go to the Hong Kong show and you go down into the basement, matter of fact, the Hong Kong show, the last 3 days are open to the public. You can actually go there, and you go into what we call the basement, though it's just the lower level of the convention center. There are, it's like, I'm not kidding you, 1.5 acres of pearls in huge sacks, and they're all freshwater pearl. And it's also because you're not subject to the ocean conditions. You ever been on an ocean? You can get big storms and all that. This is all done in internal still lakes in China. And what they'll do is they'll actually flood plain areas, so creating a little sort of a relatively shallow lake, and they will actually culture the pearls there. So it's much more controlled, so we can get a lot more pearls. Now, I'm going to go into the shot so I can explain everything to you. There we go here. To show everyone what I was talking about, that here you go with a nacre, right? Same iridescence as before, but you notice how this is a little bit less than your saltwater, okay? And that's because of the shape and size of the concentric circles of the nacre, because it's a different beast that lives in fresh water. They can culture a lot of pearls at once with this, as I've just mentioned, which gives us a lot more volume. The only thing is that these pearls are not bead nucleated. Okay, so if I were to cut this in half, there's no bead. They are tissue nucleated. So basically, if I want to culture this while the mollusk is alive and the muscle is here, I will take little tiny squares, about, I'd say maybe 4 to 5 times bigger than the head of a pin, of flesh from another mollusk, and I would make a little kind of surface incision, almost like a scratch, and I would just pepper it with all these little bits of flesh from another mollusk. And that is going to trigger all this nacre deposit here. Here in this particular case, the little flesh made its way to the shell over here. With this process of freshwater culturing pearl, there's a lot less control than there is with the saltwater. But it's made up by the fact, or it's compensated, I should say, by the fact that there's so many pearls that we can get out of just one single mollusk. So during a harvesting season, they literally can get millions and millions of these pearls at once. And most of them are going to look like this. They're off. They're like off shape and all this. It's really hard for them to find pearls. And I'm going to go into the shot here with beautiful pearls. These are freshwater cultured pearls. Now look how round they are. They're beautiful. Now the reason that you're getting these pearls and finding this in the marketplace is that there's so much pearl volume that even though this represents maybe 5% or 8% of what they're culturing, where they're round, there's so many millions of pearls that literally there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these round ones coming out. It's just a numbers game. So that is how they beat the odds and they trigger the odds. They just culture so much of this that even if one mollusk is going to make only one of these rounds, there's so many of them that they can end up with sacks of these. And this is why you're getting all these fantastic pearls on the market. Now just take a look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. Now, one thing you don't realize is that there's 3 colors that come naturally with this pearl. One is, can you see it here? It's almost like a purple color. Okay. Another one is this natural sort of peachy pink color, and the other one is white. So there's 3 colors that are completely natural to freshwater pearls. All the other colors, the blacks, the goldens, all those are dyed. But those 3 colors that I told you about are completely natural. So I like this industry because this has made pearls available to more people at amazingly affordable prices. And again, if I cut this pearl in half, it's pure nacre. So these things last forever. So they're just pure nacre. They're really, I think for the money, they're fantastic. I've always been a fan of the freshwater pearls because of that. I love the Tahitians and all this. I mean, please, but they're more expensive. So, but for everyday use, I just think your freshwater cultured pearl, to me, is the way to go. You just get a lot more from your money, and that's from Hieropsis cumingi. So that is basically the pearl industry. Now, they're always, what they do is, see how we drill a hole through them? That's how we use them. So when we find them, they're all round, and we just simply drill a hole through them. And there's special machinery made for pearls that will sort these and that will drill them and make them available for culturing. So this is always a great choice. Now, I'm often asked, how do I take care of my pearls? Well, pearls are an organic. So these pearls, any organic, amber, coral, or whatever, will be attacked by a chemical. Well, just take your bare hands, put them in a chemical, see what your hands look like. Obviously, it's not a good idea. Don't do it. And it's the same thing with anything that is not mineral-based, like coral, like amber, like amylite, or a pearl. So, no. Perfume has a lot of chemicals. Don't ever get it in your eye. God forbid you know that. You don't spray perfume directly on your pearls. If you're going to be doing, if you've got a pearl ring and you're going to be doing dishes or anything like that where there's, a chemical cleaner, take your pearl jewelry off. So anything organic does not like chemicals. If you ever do need to clean it, you clean it like we in the industry do clean it. Regular, warm, soapy water. The rule of thumb is that if the soap is mild enough for my baby, it's mild enough for the pearls. Just regular, ordinary soap. Don't use dishwashing liquid. That's way, way too harsh. Just use regular hand soap like Dove or Ivory, something like that. Very soft, a little bit of warm, soapy water. Soak them, clean them if you have to, because they can absorb skin oils and all this. And if you have a strand, after you wash them and you rinse them, you take them, don't hang them. You want to lay them flat on a towel. The reason is that they're always strung up with silk, okay, with silk thread, and you don't want to overly stretch that. So just take them, lay them flat, dry them. Don't use a hairdryer or anything like that. Just leave it alone, and they will be perfectly, perfectly fine. Now, I've often been asked, my last final thing I want to cover is bleaching. Are pearls bleached? Okay, let me explain to you what that is all about. Pearls all come from the water. We all know that. Okay. All pearls are bleached for one reason only. The real reason, it's not what you think is to change their color and all that. They're bleached to deodorize them. If you go into the ocean and you pull anything out of the water, a rock, coral, a pearl, anything, and you leave it on your kitchen counter and let it dry, what's your kitchen counter going to smell like tomorrow? It's going to smell like fish. It's going to smell like that ocean smell. So for the pearls, they have to deodorize them. The best natural deodorizer, believe it or not, is a little bit of chlorine bleach mixed with warm water. And that's why they will take all pearls and put them in these big vats of chlorine bleach simply to deodorize them. And that's why they do that. Then they take them out and they rinse them and all that. In some cases, it can alter the color a little bit, but the reason they have to do this, and I've taken pearls out of the water and not bleached them, it smells like fish the next day. I mean, it's terrible. So you have to do it. And even baking soda won't take away that smell. A little bit of chlorine bleach is really the only effective thing that does that. And it also will kill any living organism that's on it and all this, because it was from a living mollusk and all that. So that's why they do it. It's not something done, it's done for sanitary purposes. It's not done for anything else. Again, enjoy your pearls. They're lovely. Since the dawn of time, women have been enjoying pearls. Even men in many cultures wear pearls. They're beautiful. They're relatively affordable. They're organic. They're a part of our history. And I hope the pearls will become a part of your future.